I took the job because it seemed too easy to pass up. Good pay, flexible hours, and no one breathing down my neck. Just clean up after rich people while they slept. The building itself was a fortress of glass and steel, the kind of place where every floor smelled like expensive candles and fresh linen. My supervisor, a guy named Tony, handed me the key fob and a clipboard with my cleaning schedule. "One more thing," he said, lowering his voice as he pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Follow these rules. Don't ask questions." I unfolded the paper, expecting some corporate nonsense, but instead, I got a list that made my stomach twist. Rule number 4. If the door to apartment 907 is slightly open, do not close it. Just keep walking. Rule number 7. If you hear someone call your name from the elevator, do not turn around. The rest were just as unsettling. I laughed it off at first, assuming it was some weird hazing ritual. But the moment I stepped into that building alone for my first shift, the atmosphere felt wrong. The lobby was silent, except for the faint hum of the AC. The elevator ride up was slow, the kind that makes you feel weightless for a second when it stops. My route started on the 9th floor, so I got to work, dusting, vacuuming, emptying trash. It was fine for the first hour. Then, as I walked down the hall, I noticed it. Apartment 907's door was slightly open. Just enough for me to see a sliver of darkness inside. My first instinct was to close it, but then I remembered the rule. My pulse kicked up a notch. I forced myself to keep walking, but I swear I heard something shift inside the apartment. Not footsteps, something softer, like fabric dragging against the floor. I kept my pace steady, my heart hammering in my chest. My brain tried to rationalize it, maybe a draft, maybe someone inside adjusting a rug. But as I turned the corner, I heard it again. A slow, deliberate shuffling sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. My gut twisted, but I stuck to the rule. Don't stop. Don't look. Keep walking. When I reached the janitor's closet at the end of the hall, I exhaled, forcing myself to shake it off. But then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The mop bucket I'd left inside the closet? It was sitting outside now, halfway into the hallway. I hadn't put it there. I stared at it, my breath shallow, my fingers gripping the handle of my cart. There was no one else on this floor, I was sure of it. I hadn't heard footsteps, no doors opening, nothing. Swallowing hard, I nudged the bucket back inside with my foot and shut the closet door. Maybe I was just freaking myself out. Maybe I had left it outside and forgotten. That's what I told myself, anyway. But as I turned to leave, something cold brushed against the back of my neck. A breath? A draft? I spun around, expecting to see someone behind me. There was nothing. Just the empty hallway stretching behind me, the dim overhead lights humming softly. My skin prickled. I wasn't imagining it, I felt something. I forced myself to move, pushing my cleaning cart faster than before. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then I heard it, my name. Whispered, barely audible, coming from the direction of the elevator. My blood turned to ice. Rule number 7. If you hear someone call your name from the elevator, do not turn around. Every instinct screamed at me to look. What if it was Tony? What if someone actually needed help? But my gut said otherwise. My feet felt like they were sinking into the floor, but I kept moving, staring straight ahead. I reached the end of the hallway, turned the corner, and the whisper followed. Louder this time, more urgent. "Hey!" The voice was right behind me now, almost playful. My hands clenched into fists. I fought every urge to turn my head, to see who, or what, was speaking. The hallway felt longer, stretching endlessly. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned around, I wouldn't just see someone standing there. Something would be waiting. I forced myself to keep moving, my body rigid, every muscle locked up with fear. I reached the stairwell door and shoved it open, practically throwing myself inside. The heavy metal door clanged shut behind me, and for a second, all I could hear was my own breathing. I was safe, or at least I thought I was. But then, from the other side of the door, the whisper came again. Only this time, it was right against the door. I stumbled back, nearly missing the top step. My name, drawn out in a slow, deliberate hiss. I clamped a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would shake the walls. Then tap. A single, sharp knock on the metal door. My legs felt like jelly. My mind screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. And then the handle started to turn. I didn't think, I just bolted. Practically leapt down the stairs, gripping the rail so I wouldn't trip over my own feet. My cleaning cart was still back in the hallway, but screw it, I wasn't going back. My only thought was getting out of that building. My shoes slammed against the steps, the sound echoing in the empty stairwell. But as I hit the 7th floor landing, something made me stop. Not by choice. I felt it. The air had changed. It was heavy like the pressure before a storm. And worse, the stairwell wasn't empty anymore. At the next turn in the staircase, just below me, there was a figure. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't standing there, it was just there. A shape, darker than the dim light around it, like a void cut out of reality itself. My breath hitched in my throat. I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles ached. The thing didn't move, didn't breathe. But I knew it saw me. My body refused to move. I wasn't even sure if I was breathing. The thing on the stairs didn't shift, didn't twitch, but it felt like it was getting closer, like the air between us was shrinking. My vision tunneled, my pulse hammering in my ears. I needed to go back up. But that meant going past the door where I'd just heard the whisper. My skin crawled. I was trapped between two impossible choices. Then it took a step. I didn't see it move. 1 second it was still, and the next it was closer. The space where its face should have been was just a void, but I felt it staring at me. My knees buckled. I turned and ran up. I didn't care if I was breaking the rules anymore. I slammed through the door to the 9th floor, nearly falling into the hallway. The second I stepped inside, the heavy air lifted, like a bubble had popped. The hallway was empty, the elevator dinging softly in the distance. Like nothing had ever happened. I stood there, gasping for air, my back pressed against the door like I expected something to slam into it. But nothing did. No footsteps. No whispers. Just the steady hum of the building. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it, until I glanced down at my hands. They were shaking. I had never been that scared in my life. And then, as if to remind me that this was real, I noticed something down the hallway. Apartment 907's door was wide open. Not slightly ajar like before. Wide. Open. The darkness inside felt deeper than it should have been, swallowing the dim hallway light at its edges. I knew I should just walk away, pretend I never saw it, but my feet wouldn't move. A part of me was convinced that if I looked long enough, I'd see something inside. Something looking back. The same feeling from the stairwell crept up my spine. I wasn't supposed to be seeing this. I don't know what I was expecting to happen next, but I sure as hell wasn't prepared for what did. As I stood there, frozen, the lights in the hallway flickered. Not the usual dimming you get in old buildings. This was different. The bulbs buzzed, casting weird, stretched-out shadows against the walls. And then, from inside apartment 907, something moved. It wasn't a person. It wasn't even shaped like one. Just a mass, shifting in the dark, pulling itself back, deeper into the apartment like it knew I was watching. My chest tightened. My body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. Not until the lights flickered again, and in that brief flash I saw it. A pair of pale, two long hands gripping the edges of the doorframe, as if something was about to crawl out. That was it. That was all I needed. My brain finally overrode whatever sick curiosity had kept me frozen, and I ran. I didn't care about my cart, didn't care about finishing my shift. I just needed to get the hell out of there. My legs felt like lead, but I forced them to move, sprinting down the hallway toward the elevator. I slammed the button over and over, praying for the doors to open. Then, just as the elevator dinged, I heard it. A sound so low and guttural that I felt it more than heard it. A scraping, wet drag coming from behind me. Like something pulling itself across the floor. I clenched my jaw, my hands balled into fists. Rule number 7. If you hear someone call your name from the elevator, do not turn around. It didn't say anything about this. My body trembled, every inch of me screaming not to look. The elevator doors slid open, and I practically threw myself inside. My hand slammed against the ground floor button again and again, but the doors didn't close fast enough. The sound behind me grew louder, closer. That sick, wet drag against the floor, like something crawling toward me. My breath was ragged, my chest tight. Don't turn around. Don't turn around. Then it whispered my name. Not from the hallway. From inside the elevator. My stomach dropped. The doors were almost shut, just an inch left. But in that tiny gap, I caught a reflection in the polished metal. Something was behind me. I only saw a sliver of it, long fingers curling over my shoulder, a face too pale, too stretched, pressed too close. The last thing I remember before the doors shut was the cold, breathy sound of it laughing. The moment the doors sealed shut, the pressure in the air vanished. The sound, the presence gone. Just like that. My body was still locked up in terror, my hands gripping the railing so hard my knuckles ached. The elevator hummed as it descended, smooth and normal, like nothing had happened. But I knew what I saw. I knew what I felt. When the doors finally opened into the lobby, I stumbled out, barely able to breathe. The front desk was empty, just a neatly stacked pile of newspapers and the faint scent of cleaning supplies. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I glanced over my shoulder at the elevator, half expecting something to be standing inside. But it was just empty, like nothing had ever been there. I didn't waste another second. I walked straight out of the building, my legs shaking so badly I nearly collapsed on the sidewalk. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I barely felt it. My hands were still trembling, my heart still racing. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see something standing behind the glass doors, watching me. But there was nothing, just the quiet hum of the city, like this place hadn't just tried to swallow me whole. I never went back. I didn't even bother picking up my last paycheck. I blocked Tony's number, ignored every call from the management. Whatever was in that building, whatever was behind apartment 907's door, in the elevator, in the stairwell, it wasn't meant to be seen. I know how this sounds. I wouldn't believe it either if it hadn't happened to me. But even now, weeks later, I still wake up at night, heart pounding, ears straining. And sometimes, just sometimes, when everything is quiet, I swear I hear it. A whisper. Right behind me.